The Rundown with Carrie Saldo podcast is funded by Armbrook Village, offering research-based arts, music, fitness, and lifelong learning programs at their assisted living and Alzheimer's care community in Westfield. armbrookvillage.com.
Presenting Becoming Led Zeppelin, a documentary that explores the origins of this iconic group, exclusively in IMAX February 7th. Tickets at becomingledzeppelinfilm.com.
You're listening to 88.5 NEPM, NPR News and Local Perspective for Western Mass. The Rundown with Carrie Saldo is funded in part by Armbrook Village.
This is The Rundown, your weekly news and review from Western Mass. I'm Carrie Saldo, wishing all of you great luck on this allegedly unlucky Friday the 13th of December. Joining me in studio, NEPM's managing editor of news, Elizabeth Roman.
Hi.
Good morning. And Springfield Republican reporter, April May Munford. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to you both. Today, part one of our two-part 2024 News from the 413 retrospective. Each topic will explore what happened, what's changed, and where we think this issue is going to go in 2025. The stories that we're discussing, they're not ranked this morning, and we're still collecting ideas for next week. So if you at home have a Western Mass News related story that's burning inside of your brain, email us, therundown@nepm.org. A bit later, we'll dive into shifts in the electorate among some people of color, charges brought against 6 Southwick Public School students, and we'll debate what it takes to disagree respectfully. That's going to be real interesting. But first, a lot of education-related news in 2024, including Holyoke Public Schools will be returned to local control. Springfield Public Schools had a complicated superintendent search and then the abrupt retirement of Daniel Warwick. There was the word dropped in an email in East Hampton that was heard around the country. Ladies. The genderqueer book dust-up in Great Barrington. Also, in Amherst Public Schools, there was a controversy there, including allegations of racism and discrimination. And then, on the higher education front, community college became tuition-free for all Massachusetts residents. Now, we're not going to have time to get to every single one of those this morning. No worries there, ladies. But we will dive in this morning to Holyoke Public Schools, which, April, this is something that you covered a lot for the Republican. And give us the backstory on the when and why the Holyoke Public Schools have, for now about a decade, been led not by local leaders, but by the state.
Sure. So about a decade ago, the district was declared chronically underperforming. Holyoke was the second school district in the state to be placed on receivership after Lawrence Public Schools. And then in 2016, Southbridge Public Schools was also placed on receivership. So what has changed? The Holyoke Public School District says that, their graduation rate has climbed to 74.6%. The school district in-house suspension has gone down. The receivership also separated middle and elementary schools, which is going to there's going to be a new school. It's going to keep the same name. It's going to be William Peck, and it's going to keep the same theme. So $85 million for that school.
But in the run-up to this return to local control, it wasn't entirely 100% obvious that it was going to happen. Right. And I remember Liz Roman from Jill Kaufman's reporting when she was covering this for NEPM that it really took kind of some nudging from the mayor, from Joshua Garcia, and from others on the school committee. So how important do you think that nudge was to the state saying, okay, fine, we're returning this to local control?
I think it was actually really a kismet situation because Jill did report in 2022 when Governor Healy was running for office, one of her quotes was, "I will demand a plan day one for getting Holyoke out of receivership." So she already came in strong saying, this is something that I want. So it's already on her radar. Then you've got Russell Johnson taking over for Jeff Riley, who stepped down earlier this year as the Commissioner of Education. He was all on board for it, too. Then you've got the city mayor who grew up in the city. You've got this receiver who also grew up in the city saying, this is what we want. So you get all of these people coming together. And finally, it seems like that combination of the state really being invested and then the city saying, we're ready, we can do this, that's what I think made the difference.
Just back in 2017, though, there was a story in the Boston Globe about how parents sued over lack of interpretation services. We have a lot of English as second language learners in the city of Holyoke. Has there been discussion about the needs of families as we return to local control, or how this is going to work to make sure that students are getting what they need out of the system?
So far, I haven't heard any discussions about it in the school committee yet, but I do know that 86% of the students speak another language. So of course.
It's something of consequence that will need to be addressed as we move forward. Okay, so April, you reported in November that the Holyoke schools as they're emerging or going to return to local control, they're going to have this strategic plan to help these students meet the educational goals. Maybe what are the top one or two things you think in that plan they're going to help them moving toward this new return?
So how to conduct a superintendent search and evaluation, and as well as how to manage the school budget, because the school budget is a large portion of the city or town budget. So that going forward is going to be really important.
All things that the state had been in control of for the better part of a decade,
yes.
or just about a decade
and
here.
The state's been saying, strongly, we want to do this, but the school committee needs to be ready. There's a lot of training and a lot of learning that needs to happen before this move is made.
So, and I do think Commissioner Johnson did explain that there was a lot of training that has already happened, and there's he felt ready, and the district feels ready to hit the ground running on July 1.
Yeah, they've absolutely expressed excitement in all the reporting that I've been reading on this. More to come in 2025. I'm going to move us on to Springfield Public Schools, which had a complicated and rocky superintendent search this spring. Probably a bit of an understatement there. And then the abrupt early retirement of Daniel Warwick after an audio recording surfaced of him calling a school committee member and her family, quote, freaking scumbags, which was a story that you two co-reported for NEPM and The Republican. Has there been any additional community fallout from that incident, Liz April?
Not that I have heard of. That incident was pretty large, but it is, reflective of what the community has been feeling for a while.
And I mean, I think Warwick, he yes, it was an early retirement, but it was just a few days before he was set to retire already. I'm sure he had plans in place to, move on. He's got quite a sizable pension, I'm sure, because he was with the department, I believe, for 48 years with the Springfield schools. So I think he's probably just moving on with his life. When we had spoken to him early in the year, he said he wanted to spend some time with his family. And I don't think he was looking for other opportunities to keep working. It was kind of just like, wanting to settle down.
So Superintendent Sonia Donnell came in and started working in July when she was hired. She pledged unity and promised to listen to residents. She's about 5 minutes into this new gig. Any sense of how this transition has gone?
I mean, I think I will say this. I'll just be clear that because there hasn't been anything super controversial, we haven't been, following the Springfield School Committee as closely as we were during the superintendent search, because it was really big stakes. But it seems like she's really highly regarded. She's been with the system for over 20 years as well. She looks like the students of Springfield, first Black woman to serve in the position, first woman to serve as superintendent of schools in Springfield. And I think, there's been definitely a lot of community meetings. They just recently had one talking about the cameras in schools and whether police should have access to them. They actually did another one December 12th, so that was yesterday. They had another community meeting. So I think she's out there. I see her at a lot of charity events, at a lot of functions, speaking and being within the community. She comes from a background of student engagement, family engagement, so I think that serves her well.
April, what are your thoughts?
I think we should watch for, the top goals that she outlined when she became superintendent. One of those was increasing the number of graduates who continue on a post-secondary education. That's really important. I've been covering a lot of stories about post-secondary education that's not college. And I think, people are taking those pathways. So it'll be really interesting to, see what she does with that.
And speaking of post-secondary education, whether it's non-community, whether it's not college-related, like a trade or something, or college related, we saw on the higher ed front here in 2024 that community college became tuition free for all Massachusetts residents. And there were some earlier iterations of this where nursing program back in 2023 and earlier, where nursing program, anyone interested in becoming a nurse could go ahead and attend community college for free. Obviously, we have a dire need for nurses, so that made a lot of sense. There were some programs for veterans. There were some programs for people who are under the age of 25. But here we go, 2024, all Massachusetts residents, it becomes tuition free. And the 2024, as this is happening, we saw in November, Mass Live's Juliet Schulman Hall reported on the impact that that's having. And the headline there, bursting at the seams, free community college straining resources. So that story really in Mass Live delved into the impact that it's having on faculty and staff, this larger workload of more and more students. Liz, what have you been watching in this?
So yeah, I reached out to my wonderful contacts both at STCC and HCC. HCC's seen a 12% increase, which is sizable. STCC has seen a 25% increase in enrollment.
Hit me with those one more time.
12%, 12.6, so nearly 13% for HCC and 25% for STCC.
So Holyoke Community College and Springfield Technical Community College are these two institutions we're talking about.
Yeah.
So then
these are massive numbers. Like, I mean, for small community colleges to take on this influx of students. And of course, they've been wanting that, right? They've had low enrollment. So part of it is trying to build up this student force and get them going. But Juliet's reporting was really interesting because she said that 33% of students who had started Mass Reconnect were not continuing on to a second semester. So if you're not continuing on to a second semester, this is the same problem that community colleges have been having for a while, which is retention. Mm-hmm. You can get them in, but if you can't get them in to stay, and I think the reason that they're having issues with getting them to stay is because of the fact that the staff is overworked and they're trying to deal with this new infrastructure that they've had to build from scratch to offer this free college to students that are coming in. So.
And I just wonder, how is it going to affect private school enrollment, after a while?
Meaning the more people are going to be taking advantage of the free tuition and perhaps not going on to private education in the four-year setting.
Right.
Yeah. Something that Mark Hudgick, the Dean of Strategic Recruitment Initiatives at Holyoke Community College, said in the Mass Live piece was that last semester the college didn't have enough faculty to meet the number of students wanting to take general education requirement courses. So that's a huge problem if you have folks who want to take these, but you don't have the faculty and staff. And then in August, the Harvard Kennedy School did a question and answer with David Deming, a political economy professor. And one point that really stood out to me that he made was that students were paying about $4,500 a year to get a $10,000 education. So obviously tuition was not covering the true cost of getting this education. He said, quote, "The cost of paying the salaries of community college instructors, student support, building maintenance, and everything else is much higher than what can be funded by tuition. The gap is made up by state legislative appropriations. Essentially, the taxpayers fund a transfer of tax revenue each year directly to community colleges." So he raised the potential for concern as we move forward if state legislators look at this issue saying, well, community college is free, so maybe we don't need to be allocating
that funding there anymore,
as many resources. And Deming said it's important to watch for an unintended side effect of this free tuition because of that potential as we move forward. Any other thoughts on this that you've been watching?
I think it's par for the course for government, right? They set up this program and it's amazing and everybody's excited, free education, and they set up no structure for community colleges to move forward with this. And it's not that they're not grateful. All the feedback I've gotten is that this is amazing. You have all these opportunities for students to get an education where they couldn't before, but there needs to be structures in place. There needs to be training in place. There needs to be money in place for the staff so that they are supported so that they can help these students coming in.
Yeah, I think that was one of the things that really hit me in the Mass Live piece was that the professors, assistant professors doing this work, they're taking on additional classes to help earn additional money, but they might also be working night jobs or working at more than one institution to make all the ends meet.
I think this comes down to how are we going to fill the workforce, right? Like, we have this community college to hopefully get some people workforce ready, trained or trained to at least get, an entry-level job, but we still worry about how we're going to get professors and how we're going to get people in the building to
teach the skills.
To teach the skills, right?
Yeah. All right, well, more to come on this. We're going to take a brief break, but ahead, our rundowners revisit shifts in the electorate this 2024 presidential cycle, charges brought against 6 Southwick public school students, and we'll debate what it takes to disagree respectfully. Have something to say about that? Email the rundown at nepm.org. This is The Rundown on 88.5 NEPM. I'm Carrie Saldo. We'll be right back. Welcome back to The Rundown. I am Carrie Saldo, joined in studio this week by Elizabeth Roman of NEPM and April May Munford of the Springfield Republican. We'll continue now with our 2024 News from the 413 retrospective. We're taking a look at what happened, what's changed, and where these issues are going to go in 2025. Liz, when I came to you and April and kind of said, what are some stories that jumped to top of mind? One of the things that jumped out for you was voter turnout among people of color. Obviously, presidential election cycle. There's been so much news. I'm like, oh, yeah, that also happened. And some context here from the Secretary of State, William Galvin. He released the official vote totals late last month and said, quote, the turnout in Massachusetts appears to reflect a national trend with a significant drop in participation in several of our cities, especially those with larger minority populations, and a slightly smaller rise in turnout in the more rural and suburban areas of the state. So what are we seeing?
Yeah, so I mean, yes, I think Galvin is on it, right? He knows what's going on and the pulse of what's happening at a national level. There's about 36 million, I believe, Latino voters, and about half of them came out to vote. Is some of the statistics that I've been looking at, and we've got to address it. A lot of them voted for Donald Trump. They voted Republican. Still a majority for Harris overall, but Latino men in particular really came out in support of him. Early exit polls were saying something like 52, 53%, something like that. It's been lowered since then to the 40s, but that's still a substantial amount of people that are voting for a Republican Party, for a group of people that is considered to be more Democratic leaning.
Historically, yes. Right? Both Latinos and African Americans could be counted on among in Democratic circles as folks that they thought would come out and support their team. And we are seeing a significant shift in that. April, what did you see when you looked at numbers?
So first I wanted to say, Holyoke was one of those several cities that saw a decline of almost 10% in votes. Wow. And Holyoke has the highest per capita of Puerto Rican people in the globe besides the island of Puerto Rico. So that was really interesting to me. But we see that Black women overwhelmingly, 91% voted for Harris and 7% voted for Trump. However, Black men, 21% voted for Trump. And so it's, it kind of doubled, which is really interesting, especially with some of the rhetoric, in my opinion.
I think one of the things that I was seeing, there's an organization called X, which means X in Spanish, and they're like a Latino voter kind of polling organization. And they were pointing out some of the reasons that people may have leaned Republican, and it's not as a whole. So they're not expecting, their prediction is that, Latinos are not going to become Republican supporting, they specifically voted for Trump because a lot of them liked the way that he was brash, that he was blunt. He came out, he said, this is the issue with the economy, I'm going to fix it. And in our reporting, a lot of our reporters were out in the community in Western Mass, and people were saying, it's the economy, we want to change. He came out and said he was going to fix the economy. Whether that's true or not, people believed it, and they went out and voted. So I don't know that that these high numbers of Latino voters going out for Trump specifically is representative of them suddenly changing or shifting to a Republican mindset. And you have to think also, Latinos are not a monolith. You've got Puerto Ricans who are citizens. So this issue of like mass deportation, unfortunately for a lot of them, it doesn't resonate because they have their U.S. citizenship. Mm-hmm. So it's not something that they took into consideration. They were more focused on, looking at the economic issues that we're facing as a community.
I think that's what I heard as well. I hit the canvas in Holyoke and West Springfield, and a lot of residents that I spoke with was concerned about fixing the economy, inflation, high groceries, high gas. People are focused on getting money back into their pockets.
It's the famous James Carville line from the earlier Clinton campaign, "It's the economy, stupid." And it remains true. Going to move us along to another huge story. April, you did some fantastic reporting on this out of Southwick. In March, criminal charges were brought against 6 eighth graders from Southwick after an alleged series of racist and threatening social media posts centered on 2 black classmates. The charges: witness interference, civil rights violations, and threatening to commit a crime linked to alleged bullying and bigotry. As I said, you covered this, as did Stephanie Barry at the Republican. This hinged on 2 black students making their voices heard in a predominantly white school. Did those students or families discuss what that was like for them to come forward?
Oh, yeah. And it, at the school committee meetings during this entire ordeal, I want to call it, there were more students who came out and discussed egregious patterns of culture where this has been, taking place, and the cheek has been turned.
And we saw State Attorney General Andrea Campbell get involved in this situation. In July, she came out and said there's going to be a 12-step plan here in Southwick moving forward to ensure, quote, an effective and comprehensive response to racist bullying. Thoughts on that plan, or the fact that even this Attorney General got involved?
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty big to begin with. But I think one of her points was that in the next steps is that the onus is on the district to report any hate crimes. So this was a situation where students came forward, talked to the district. The district didn't do enough for, to rectify the situation. So then they had to go to the community leaders, right? NAACP, everybody suddenly got involved. Then it went back to the district. What Campbell is saying is, no, you guys have to come to us directly and I mean, that's kind of a wild thing, right? To go directly to the AG if you see any cases of this. But because it was such an egregious situation, I think that particular point in the plan is valid.
I think, too, that, she wants to make sure that there's meaningful action in place to make to heal or to help the district move forward when they have incidences like this be reported.
And some of the action steps that she is requiring include bringing in outside parties to assess and train students and faculty members. The William James College Center for Behavioral Health, Equity, and Leadership in Schools has started conducting a needs assessment. And then in June, the Northeastern Center for the Study of Sport and Society also held a training at the school and an assembly, which went over toxic speech, bystander intervention, and more. And then the Attorney General said, quote, "Our resolution with the Southwick School District not only addresses the egregious racist incident that occurred last school year, but it creates a model for combating hate in a comprehensive, preventative, and systemic manner." And then she went on to say, "I will continue to take on racism and hate in all its forms, and my office is ready to partner with school districts across the state to ensure that they understand their legal obligations and have the resources and support needed to build inclusive and safe school culture." So she's going to hang in there through the 2026 school year is what she has said. And certainly you both, I'm sure, are in EPM Newsroom and April, you'll keep watching this. Anything you're going to keep an eye on as we move to 2025 on this one, April?
Yeah, I'm going to keep an eye on what the district has actually put in place, what steps have been accomplished, and then what other districts are looking to follow suit. And what districts got it right.
And I don't know if we have time to touch on the charges. I don't know if we want to discuss it, but some of those students were charged. So it was not only like, oh, let's get some training in schools. It's like there are serious consequences for this. And while the DA's office has decided that they're not going to be issuing any more information about this because the students are minors, they were brought before the court system. They were made to be accountable for their actions. And I think that that's an important measure to dissuade or discourage other students from behaving in this manner. Not that should be necessary, but it seems in this case that it was.
But I also think that needs to happen, right? Because a lot of times there's no consequences. And so seeing those consequences happen in public will dissuade other students.
And I think it was your reporting, April, where you spoke with a few professors, and one of the professors made that point that these type of very public charges, while unfortunate because the kids are all so young who are involved in this, but it helps to bring some accountability. Whether or not, these are allegations, whether or not these charges result in any penalties for those 6, but just accountability for the community, right?
Absolutely.
Where you can look and say that this type of behavior can have consequences and should be taken incredibly seriously. Also, I think the speech that was happening, allegedly or not, in Southwick, we saw in several communities, not only in Western Massachusetts, but across the country. And we saw an editorial this weekend in the Sunday Republican where the headline was, "We share a duty to disagree respectfully." The editorial came after Sam Shumsky, a city councilor for Chicopee's Ward 6, said he received physical and online threats after voting to move a controversial development proposal to a subcommittee hearing in December. He received phone calls from people he said threatened to hurt or kill him. And on top of that, the lug nuts on his car were loosened.
So scary.
Thoughts on this?
I mean, honestly, I think it's this internet culture, right? People have become so emboldened to go online and to say whatever they want to say with no retribution. And I think now it's become so common that you can spit this vitriol online that it's transferring into real life. And it's not to say that city officials haven't for generations been berated by the public. That's kind of part of the job. But taking it to the level of actually showing up at someone's house or finding their car, I mean, that's like stalking. That's criminal behavior. You could actually hurt somebody. But I think there's like a desensitivity. I don't know if that's the word, but we've become desensitized to this idea of people. There are results for the things that you say. There are real people behind these
You're sitting
city
on a
councils,
screen, and it's pretty easy to fire off, whether it's an email or a social media post. I mean, it got me thinking because I took a social media cleanse. My kid's going to be 6 in February, and I think when he was around 2, I'm like, I just need a little break, and I have not gone back.
Yeah.
April.
So let's go back to what's happening in the Southwick schools. When I interviewed Craig Dunton, Associate Professor of Criminal Justice in Western New England University, it's a microcosm of what's happening in society. We see it from the head of the country all the way down. And the other professor, Whitney Battle Baptiste, said social media has served as a loophole for bad language, right? And we can type it all we want, and then we feel like we don't have consequences after. And I think that that's what we're seeing.
Yeah. And unfortunately, this is not a problem unique to just the United States. I was doing a little research, kind of looking for some positivity, and I came across this local government association website, and I'm reading about all the steps they're taking to help train people and work on helping people understand the scale and impact of intimidation and abusive behavior. And then I realized that this website was rooted in London. So they're dealing with it there as well. But on that point of some positivity, the Allegheny College Prize for Civility in Public Life reminded me of some notable examples of who has figured out how to disagree respectfully. Vice President Joe Biden and Senator John McCain won the award in 2016 during their presidential campaign. 2017, U.S. Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg and U.S. Supreme Court Justice Antonin Scalia, two folks who couldn't be on more opposing sides of some issues, they won this award. So I guess my point is it's possible.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there's hope to be had as long as people are willing to have conversations. And the disagreement, I think, is where it's a little bit rough, right? Where you can't come to a middle ground, and a lot of that has to do with the educational system and the fact that students, I don't think, are given the critical thinking skills that they were given before because of things like the MCAS and the way that they're being taught. And so if it starts there, it kind of builds up to the point where they can't communicate with each other.
Also, public speaking skills have gone down. You know, just in my own daughters. What do I say on the phone?
Oh, yeah. We have about 45 seconds. I'm going to move us quickly for Scoop, Sprays, and Prediction, where we ask our panel to make a prediction, maybe spill the tea on a story they're working on, or heap some praise on a newsworthy nugget. Liz, Ramon.
I think that as a resident of Springfield, Bright Nights is going to pick up because the last couple of weeks, and so I'm dreading the traffic, but excited for the city to have people coming through and seeing the beautiful displays.
April May Munford.
Check out why I voted yes on question 2, reflecting on 25 years of MCAS.
That's coming in the Springfield Republican.
Yes.
Mine is that a very 413 Christmas Carol that NEPM taped recently is going to be a smash hit in the coming weeks, and you can listen if you missed the recording on December 21st. You've been listening to The Rundown here on 88.5 NEPM. My thanks to my panelists.
Thank you.
Have a great morning.